Hello, and thank you for joining me today. Well, this is the Wednesday, May the 25th edition of our video devotionals. We appreciate you being with us today, and we call this Winning Wednesday, and we are winners in the Lord Jesus Christ. And of course, this is the halfway point of the work week and school week, and then Wednesday evening church services. And if you're able to attend on a Wednesday evening, then do that if you possibly can. So we're going to go ahead and jump into things here today, get you in and out. Had a good time. Again, thank you for all who watch the videos, all the responses, the acknowledgments. We appreciate that very much. Today we're going to be in the book of Esther. We're going to be in chapter 4, verses 13 through 16. And tomorrow we'll finish it out. It's not a very lengthy book, but a very powerful book and has a special connection with me. And I'll explain that here in just a minute. So we'll begin here in chapter 4 and then start at verse 13. Before we do that, just a little context. This is that period of time in which the Jews, of course, are not in their land. They were taken captive, what we call the Babylonian captivity, that 70-year period. And at this particular point, they're not, the people that we're addressing today, they're not in, Jerusalem or that area, but they're around Shushan, the palace, the king Ahasuerus, and he's kind of basically making a big deal about his glory and all that he is. And then one day he commands his queen to come in, Vashti, to kind of parade her around because she's a beautiful woman. And she says, I'm not going to do that. So the king says, man, we got a problem here. So his counselor said, well, we need to dethrone her and find another queen. So they went throughout the whole entire kingdom to find a beautiful woman that would be suitable to the king. Ended up being this young Jewish girl by the name of Esther. And she was being raised by her cousin, Mordecai. So she gets chosen to be the queen, and then there's this particular man by the name of Haman. And Mordecai and Haman have this indifference with each other. Haman has been promoted by the king, and everybody's supposed to bow down and reverence him. Mordecai wouldn't do that. So Haman gets mad and says, who does this guy think he is? And they said, well, find out what his lineage is, find out who his people are. And they found out that he was a Jew. And he says, you know what, I'm going to have all the Jews destroyed. And I think it was like a 1-year period. They made a decree, went to the king and said, there's these troublemakers in your kingdom, and we're going to get rid of them, and there will be a specific day. And I think that was a 1-year period. So word gets back, of course, to Esther and Mordecai. Mordecai is tore all to pieces, of course, about his people. And so this is the setting here where they realize, man, all the Jews are in trouble throughout the entire known world, really. And here's what happens here as we start here in verse 13. It says, then Mordecai commanded to answer Esther, think not with thyself that thou shalt escape in the king's house more than all the Jews. For if thou altogether holdest thy peace at this time, then shall their enlargement and deliverance arise to the Jews from another place. But thou and thy father's house shall be destroyed. And who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? So let's stop here. Probably one of the most infamous phrases that you find in Esther is that phrase there. Who knoweth whether thou art come to the kingdom for such a time as this? In other words, you've been set up in a position in which you've got some power, you've got some sway, at least with the king. And who knows if that's the reason why you even have this position, is to make a big difference. And again, we have to say that to all of us. Wherever you end up, certain places, sometimes certain positions, certain things just kind of happen. And we know it's not an accident with God. And we have to ask ourselves, who knows if we're in the position we're in to make a difference, to be there because God's placed us in that position and we're there. So that's kind of what's being said here. And then as we get down here to verses 15 and 16, it says this, then Esther bade them return Mordecai this answer. Go gather together all the Jews that are present in Shushan and fast ye for me, and neither eat nor drink 3 days, night or day. I also and my maidens will fast likewise. And so will I go in unto the king, which is not according to the law, and if I perish, I perish. So, of course, you wasn't just supposed to barge in even as queen and just kind of approach the king, and you could actually lose your life for that. And Esther is making the point. She says, look, we're going to fast, we're going to get prepared here, and then I'm going to approach the king about this and make my supplication. And she made the statement, she says, and if I perish, I perish. Now, here's what's especially special about this book and that last phrase there, if I perish, I perish. Very short story here, but I had no aspirations to be a pastor, to be a preacher. But we went to pastor school up in Hammond, Indiana in 1989. Christy's family had lived there. Her father had graduated from the Bible college there. And I wanted to go there. They had this annual, what's called pastor school, which is not just for pastors, but to go there and see where Christy and they had lived. And of course, she had a lot of friends there. She went to the Christian school and all of that. So we went there. And so to make a long story short, Thursday night of that particular conference, a message was preached by the pastor, Dr. Jack Hiles. And I didn't know this at the time, but typically on a Thursday night of pastor school, it is a message in which there is a plea to see if God is calling young people, young men especially, of course, to be pastors, to be preachers. And so on that night, this was the text, if I perish, I perish. And it basically was the same context here. He was saying, look, he says, as a pastor, he says, I pastor thousands of people here. He says, but if the day ever comes in which everybody can fit just up in the choir loft because of my stand for God and whatever happens in this world, and if I perish, I perish. He says, we need that kind of a people. And boy, it just spoke to me. And then at the end of that service with the invitation, then I felt like God had called me to preach. 188 other men went forward and said God had called them, and I was one of those 189. So I knew then that God had called me, and then of course I went off to Bible college, and then of course I became a pastor. So all that to say, but here's the text. That's why this book is special to me. And the concept is, and the principle is, when you do what you do for God, and even if it costs you your life, if you're doing the right thing, and God has put you in that position, then so be it. That's the way it is, and we should have that attitude. It's not an easy attitude, and you look at the day and time that we live in, and I say as a preacher, the things I say from the pulpit. One of these days, someone may come in and say, "You just can't say that. You're going to face imprisonment." And in some cases, as we've looked back at our forefathers and the people that's lived before us, people have their lives have been taken, and because of their stand for God. But she said, look, if I go into the King, and if I die because of this, she says, if I perish, I perish. So it's a strong attitude to have, and yet it's an attitude that she had for her people and for her God. And I got called to preach under that particular principle, and I've never forgot that. I'm not looking to start a fight. I'm not looking to put myself in a position like that. But you know what? I'm not going to run from it either. And I'm going to do the wise thing. I think wisdom is an important thing, but I also believe taking your stand for God. And no doubt when you look throughout the Bible and see what people have had to do and where God has put them, then certainly their lives have been taken in some cases. And of course, there's been some miraculous, escapes from those things. But either way, I guess the attitude is, if serving God means that I put myself in a position like that, then if I perish, I perish. So let's serve the Lord either way, and let's do the right thing. So I appreciate you listening today. Be safe and healthy out there. We'll see you tomorrow on what we call Trusting Thursday, and have a great day.